Happy 2021. Back in December, I asked all of you lovers to submit some questions that I could answer about visiting London in 2021. So I'm gonna answer the questions, and I've time-stamped each of the questions in the description box of the video to help you save some time, and you can skip around to the questions that are gonna be most relevant to you. And I'm looking down at my laptop to read these questions, by the way. Ty Cannell said, how do you think the London experience will change for tourists in 2021? I think things are gonna be different in different ways depending on what part of 2021 you want to come visit during. But I think the main thing is that tourists are gonna have to be very flexible when they come to London this year. I don't think that's a bad thing, and personally, I think it's gonna be kind of good for the tourism industry to, dare I say, weed out the tourists that are super unflexible. They're the ones that don't tend to contribute as much to the local economy. Anyway, long story short, the most important thing is that when you travel to London, you're just gonna have to be flexible. Other than that, it's really hard for me to say. It's all like pure speculation, and a lot of my speculation in 2020 was very incorrect. I do expect we'll all continue to wear masks well into 2021, which I personally think is fine if it means that we're allowed to do a lot more things. But we just have to wear a mask. I'm for it, I don't care. Travelers also need to have a heightened level of patience with hospitality and tourism employees. It has been such a difficult 12 months plus for people working in these industries especially. So please have extra patience. Understand they've dealt with so much, so they're having a tough time. Solon said, does Brexit change something for EU citizens who want to come? If you're just coming to the UK for a short holiday visit, no, nothing major really is changing. Obviously, just be prepared to travel with your actual passport, not one of like your EU residency cards. You do want to check with your mobile phone provider to see how much it's going to cost you to use your phone when you're in the UK, because obviously the EU roaming charges thing isn't going to apply. And if you end up renting a car, you can still drive on your EU passport in the UK. That being said, of course, there are exceptions to rules and things change very quickly. So I have left a link in the description box of this video that links to the page from the Home Office that tells you what you can expect after the 1st of January 2021. You should definitely reference that for concrete information. Susan Seeing said, what are the big events and festivals in 2021? We don't know, Susan, to be completely honest. During normal times, there are tons and tons of large and small events that happen throughout London through the entire year. But with everything going on, we just have no idea what things will be happening because of restrictions, but also, unfortunately, which companies that run certain events that we usually have, if they've gone under or they just don't have the funds to put on that event this year, even if restrictions are lifted. Your best bet though is if you're just kind of trying to generally plan and you have an idea of what time of year you're going to come to London, is I actually have an entire video playlist of videos broken down by month that talk about what special events and holidays happen in London for each month of the year. So there's a link for that in the description box of the video. It's popping up here as well. So I would go to that playlist and have a watch of the videos in there. But again, we don't know which of those things will actually happen in 2021. Gustav C said, will the prices for attractions and day trips increase or stay the same? So I imagine that the majority of attractions and just most things in general in London, the prices are going to increase in 2021 for various reasons. But as you can probably imagine, these venues are having to do reduced people capacity, and of course their running costs have increased due to COVID. That means that in order to actually break even or make a profit, they're going to have to raise their ticket prices. In terms of day trips, if you're talking about like those ones where they take you on a bus and you visit like 5 cities in one day, I mean, yeah, the prices of those are going to increase as well. But I personally don't really recommend doing those anyway. If you want to do a day trip, just take a train and go to just one place for the day. On a similar note, Lucian asked, did accommodation prices increase or drop due to the pandemic? And Petra, she also asked that on YouTube. The accommodation prices have lowered significantly. They did for 2020, and we can absolutely suspect that in 2021 we can still see a pretty good reduction in prices because things aren't going to go back to fully normal in 2021, and it's going to take tourism quite a bit of time to recover over the next couple of years. So hotels have a finite number of rooms that they're trying to fill, so a lot of them are going to be offering quite reduced prices throughout the year. In my video about how to start planning your future London trip now, I did talk about how when you book your accommodation, you're gonna wanna book a flexible rate. This is for a variety of reasons, but on the topic of this, if you book a flexible rate, you can keep an eye on the hotel's website and see if they end up doing any like last minute deals that are a lot cheaper than you originally paid. And if they do, then you can cancel your original booking and then book at the cheaper rate. It's good to just do flexible right now anyway, because you just really don't know what's gonna happen. Prespa asks, are double-decker buses used for transportation or are they strictly for tourists? Okay, so you're talking about two different things. There are the red double-decker buses that are the ones that Londoners use. They're part of the public transportation system. You use an Oyster card or a contactless debit or credit card to pay £1.50 as soon as you get onto the bus. That's completely different from the red double-decker buses that are the hop-on, hop-off tours. You can usually tell the difference because they say like tour bus on the side and they have a partially open top at the top. And those buses only stop at bus stops that are for that specific tour company. So it's hard to really like mix them up. I don't particularly like those hop on, hop off buses. They're super touristy, they get stuck in traffic. And you know me, I'm all about the more local vibe, and those buses are not, they're not the local vibe. Marissa Grams asked, how might Brexit changes affect US travelers? There won't be any major direct changes for Americans because obviously America is not in the EU, and the UK has never had like fully open borders anyway, so there's always been a border thing. If you're going, let's say, from like London to France, you will have to go through border checks when you get to France. Of course, Brexit is going to affect everything, especially in terms of like pricing and maybe a little bit of availability. I don't know, nothing catastrophic, so don't worry. But yeah, all that remains to be seen. But in general, for Americans and anyone coming from any country around the world, you always should be checking the equivalent in your country of the Home Office or the State Department, whatever website they have that tells you what you need to know before you go to a certain country. They'll tell you what visa restrictions there are, entry requirements. Right now they're telling you what you can expect in terms of if you need a COVID test before you go someplace. That should be always your first port of call whenever you're traveling to a foreign country and want to know about stuff like that. Marissa also asked about cheap food hacks. Eating your like biggest, best meal at lunchtime, especially during the week, is going to cut down on your overall food bill significantly. And that's because lunch just tends to be a bit cheaper in most of the city. And if it's during the week, a lot of restaurants are trying to entice people in during lunchtime because it's like their slower time of the day. So you can usually find some kind of like set lunch menu or some kind of deal where you get an extra food or drink or something with it, and that will end up saving you some money. Also, I always say that markets are the best places to go if you want cheap eats and you want food that's still actually really good. And I obviously recommend that you visit some of the markets that are more off the beaten path, which you can find out which ones I recommend by watching my video about markets to visit that you have never heard of by clicking the card up here or the link in the description. So many things in the description for this video, but that's how we're gonna start off 2021. Petra asks, clothing must-haves per season like winter. So in terms of winter, we don't get very cold weather in London, except for we get usually a couple of week-long cold spells. My best tip for visiting when it's cold is to just have layers, because obviously you want to make sure you're bundled up if you're going to be walking around outside a lot, but then you want to be able to take things off when you go onto the tube or you're going into a restaurant and you're going to be hanging out in the warmth for a while. I'm not a fashion expert, but I do have a video that I made last year that shows you how to dress for visiting London in the winter. It's not my best fashion work, but it really harps on like the kind of layering that I do, especially when I'm out filming. And I also show you some options of how you can dress to stay warm, but you're going out to like nice dinners and to bars in the evening. Timmy asks, can you or a friend comment on any current changes, good or bad, in disability access in London and elsewhere in England? I'm working on educating myself more about this. And personally, as somebody who has the privilege of being able-bodied, I can't really speak fully on this situation. I don't know everything that there is to it. Personally, for us at Love in London, last year we added to the 3-day London itinerary a little icon next to each of the recommendations in that itinerary that is fully wheelchair accessible. And we're also working through starting this year our content, either things that we're recommending in videos or on our website, to make some kind of notation that shows which venues recommended are wheelchair accessible. So I do hope that our content is going to start to be more relevant to people who do have disabilities. I'm also aware that disabilities aren't just related to needing wheelchair ramp access, and that disabilities can go all across the board. So that's something that I'm educating myself on and will be working on in 2021 too. Also, there's a new luxury hotel that's opening in Leicester Square called the Londoner that has exceeded the statutory requirements for having wheelchair accessible rooms. And it's being said that those rooms aren't gonna get like the crap views like they do in a lot of hotels. They're gonna get some of the best views in the hotel. So that's pretty cool. Mary asked, we have stayed in Airbnbs in Mayfair and Covent Garden on previous trips. Is there another area you would recommend as home base to try? Yeah, I would recommend getting out of that tourist bubble and going to, say, East London. East London has an interesting mix of city hipster vibes, but then also parts of it are parks and have very much of a village feel. So I think that would be great for you. If you've seen my video where I show you what 100 pounds a night gets you in London, I stayed at a hotel called Mama Shelter, and that's located in Bethnal Green. And that is a really good location for getting to Shoreditch and getting into central London, but also being able to explore areas like Columbia Road, Broadway Market and London Fields, Victoria Park Village. So I would recommend having a watch of that video to see what you think of that hotel. Otherwise, there are a bunch of hotels if you go into Shoreditch and nearby Shoreditch, like Citizen M and M by Montcalm, that are great options too. And don't forget, I have a whole video series about how to choose your accommodation when you're in London, including 2 videos that talk about different areas. So again, in the description box. Are you guys getting this? Tony Angelica asks, I just needed to know a place for a manicure and a pedicure. I hear ya. Okay, I would head to Cowshed. Cowshed is the spa brand that's under Soho House, and they have a bunch of locations around London. Some of them are in the Soho houses, so they're members only, but then there's one on Carnaby Street, one in Primrose Hill, and a couple other places around London. Mr. Billy Sanchez says, did you find it hard to move to London? Isolated, nervous? Wife and I want to move to London in 2021. Yeah, moving to a foreign country is really hard. And honestly, it's not just the initial move that's hard. I think that even years down the line, as you really start to build your life in a foreign country and your friends and family continue to build their lives very far away. Yeah, I think it's pretty tough. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't change my situation. I love living in London, and I'm so lucky that to come to New York, I say come because actually I'm filming this in New York. I'm so lucky that I can go to New York very easily if I needed to. But I won't sugarcoat it, it's hard. And one of the hardest things is making friends, and COVID makes it very difficult to make friends right now. That being said, moving with a partner does make that so much easier. But I imagine that you want to have friends outside of the 2 of you. Shocking, I know, married people wanting to have friends besides themselves. That being said, it's such a great experience. And don't forget, I do have a bunch of videos about living in London, and you can just watch all of those through and get tons of information before you end up making the move to London. Okay, I'm confident this is the year that London travel is coming back. Oh, I hope so, please. I have tons more videos on this channel that will help you with planning your trip to London, so you can watch one of them by clicking the box that's popping up right here, somewhere around here. Here, these places. Okay, bye.